New to horror? Let me recommend some books for you. Alright guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Zach with Zacks Books, and welcome back to Zocktober. So we are still going strong here with the month of Zocktober. Again, if you don't know what that is, it is each day for the month of October. We are planning to post a video every day, and if you have stumbled across this one, then we're still going strong. So, woo! So in today's video, what I've got for you is a horror book recommendation for beginners, I'll say. So I've got all kinds of genres here. I mean, there are horror, but like sub-genre horror. I've got like a YA, I've got science fiction, I've got pure straight up horror. We will have all the books linked down below if you're intrigued with any of these. And yeah, all these books I've read and have given, I think, 4 stars or higher, so highly recommended. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and let me share some books with you. Alright, so if you're new to horror, a good place to sometimes start would be YA, or as we call it in the book world, young adult. And one that I read last year that I thought was really solid, I gave it, I'm pretty sure, is 4 stars. It could have been 4.5. But also check out Goodreads. We have that link down below as well. All these books are on that as well. But the first book I'm going to recommend that's a YA horror book is Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Caesar. This book I thought was very good. I mean, if you're a fan of clowns, this kind of can do it for you too. I thought this book was very solid. It's about a group of kids. They're in this town, and like the town's mascot is this clown. And there's a clown killer kind of on the loose, and a bunch of the friends just kind of start, getting picked off. They're dying, and the climax battle at the end, and like the reveal about like the truth about behind like the clown. It's honestly really, really good. And this is the first Adam Caesar book I read, and it was a very solid read. I really enjoyed it, and I really recommend this because it's got a creepy atmosphere to it, and it's not quite like full on horror scary. It's got some comedic moments too, so it's kind of like it's a very good book. So first one I'm going to recommend is Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Caesar. Alright, the next one that I'm going to recommend is Bird Box by Josh Malerman. This book I thought was really solid. If you know about the movie that came out on Netflix years ago with Sandra Bullock in it, there's like all like the memes and stuff like that with it. But I haven't seen the movie. I've like watched clips from the movie, and it seems pretty spooky. And so that kind of led to me wanting to read the book. And so finally I did, and I absolutely loved this book. So if you don't know what Bird Box is about, it's about these weird creatures that come to, I don't think they're aliens. They're not really described where they come from. It's just these weird creatures, and how they work is if you see them, they pretty much make you kill yourself. And that's pretty much how the book works. So people are going around in blindfolds. You're pretty much following a group of survivors in like this house. And you also kind of get like, there's 2 like storylines going on at the same time. There's a woman on a boat with 2 children. And then there is the story about what's going on in the house with the woman and like a whole bunch of people. The woman starts out in the book, she's pregnant. And obviously by me saying there's 2 children, she eventually gives birth. And it's a really solid story. I really enjoyed the book, and there's a sequel called Mallory, which it is actually like a sequel. So the kids are a little bit older, and that one's a really solid story too. But the original Bird Box is just it's better in my opinion. It's really cool, and I really did enjoy this book. So the next book I recommend is Bird Box by Josh Malerman. Alright, so this is the first of a couple of novellas I have on this list. This book, I think this was the first one I read by this author, and it was a 5-star book. It really stuck out to me, and I absolutely loved it. That's Sour Candy by Keelan Patrick Burke. This book, this novella, it took me by surprise. I was not expecting it to be as good as it was, and as soon as I finished it, this thing was probably in like 12 videos, like all back to back to back to back to back. It was incredible. It was such a good book. The story behind this one is there's this guy who's in this relationship. He's kind of like a douchey kind of guy. And one day he goes to the store, and there's this little kid and this mom, and the mom looks really sick. She looks like crap. And this kid's just being a complete bully, being really mean. He drops his bag of candy, and the guy goes over to try and help him. And like the kid offers him a piece of candy, and he takes it. After he has the candy, a lot of bad things happen. And I'm not going to spoil anything because that would obviously spoil the book. And it's a very creepy and eerie book. The little kid character is just like a pure nightmare child, and it's creepy as hell. I really enjoyed this, and I gave it 5 stars. I know that for sure. So there you have Sour Candy by Keelan Patrick Burke. Alright, the next short story that I have on the list is Who Goes There by John W. Campbell. So this is like the science fiction one that I would recommend for horror fans. The movie The Thing with Kurt Russell in the 80s or 90s is based off of this book. However, I will say this book does go a little bit further out with like a little bit beyond. Like the survivors end up on a spaceship at the end of this one. The difference is, so like with the movie, it's one of the biggest cliffhangers in cinema history is the 2 survivors, like, at the very end, like, survive everything, and they're face to face with each other, and they need to figure out who the thing is. Or, in this case, with the book, who goes there. So, the big thing with this is it's a group of Americans in, I want to say it's the Arctic, and they are, they're doing, like, you know, they're scientists out in the Arctic is basically what it is. And they stumble across this spaceship. And there's an alien creature that they discover. And what this creature can do is it mimics a person perfectly. And what it does is it takes over a person. It, you know, copies them like perfectly. Like they can say, they sound just like the person. They look just like the person. They can act just like the person. And it's horrific because you don't know who's who. And, you know, there's lots of trust issues that happen in the book, just like in the movie. It's a really good read, and I actually really enjoyed it. I feel like they could have done a little more in terms of, like, the book. Like, I thought there was going to be a little bit more. It felt like it could have gone longer than it did. But all in all, it was a very good short story, and I'm pretty sure I give this 5 stars as well. So there you have Who Goes There by John W. Campbell. Alright, the next one is kind of like I don't want to say fun because it's a horror book, but it's kind of like a weird interactive type book, and it's called Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. So this is kind of like, it kind of looks like an IKEA catalog, and like how it works is like, there's different like pieces of furniture, and it's got a pricing, and like it's, you know, it kind of looks like a layout for like a store. It's a very weird book. The chapters are like pieces of furniture. Yeah. It's like chapter 6 is whatever that word is, and it's like that piece of furniture, and then there's like a little bit about like what the piece of furniture is, and then the chapter starts. This book was very weird. It worked, and ideally what happens is there's this store, horror store, and how it goes is there's this lady who gets a job there, and mysterious things kind of happen in the middle of the night, and the manager's like, I need to figure out what's going on. Let's figure out what's going on, and like the camera's turned off at certain times, and so finally they're like, let's get a crew in there at, you know, overnight, see what happens, and go from there. Well, a lot of things don't go right, and Danielle and I actually did a buddy read on this book, and I'm pretty sure she gave it about the same star rating as I did, like 3.5, 4 stars, something like that. And it's actually pretty good. And it it's a very weird book. It was very different, and that's, you kind of got like, I don't know. There's like, it felt like ads like every chapter to start with like a piece of furniture, but like towards the end, the ads like start getting more like sadistic and they're like really creepy. So I thought it worked. I actually really did enjoy this book, and I highly recommend it if you want something that's kind of like a weird, not like interactive, but like interactive type book. So there you have Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. Alright, so if you're new, like you're just starting out with reading books and you want like a classic horror book to read, the one I was contemplating was the Amityville Horror, but I thought that was maybe a little too much to kind of get started on. And if you are new to like the horror genre, then I'm going off the assumption you haven't seen maybe a classic horror film. And I think Psycho by Robert Bloch would work perfect in that case. So obviously I've seen the movie, so I knew like the big twist, but I still really enjoyed the book. I gave it 5 stars. If you're someone who has not seen the movie, this is something that could give you a big surprise. It's one of the biggest twists in cinema history. It's one of the biggest twists, I feel like, in literacy history as well. And if you have not seen the movie, I would read the book first, because the plot twist in this book is iconic. It's phenomenal. I mean, so if you don't know what it's about this hotel. There's this lady who goes in there, and there's this weird guy named Mr. Bates. It's the Bates Motel, but I don't remember what the actual guy's name is. Norman Bates. And so he lives out in a separate house, and he keeps referencing like, well, my mom and I run this place. She doesn't come down that often. She's really sick, this and that. And, nobody's... God, it's like such a big twist in this book. It's like hard to like try describing the book, because like you don't really want to spoil anything. But what ends up happening is somebody gets murdered in the hotel. The first woman that you meet gets murdered, and then the second person and like another detective come down, and they're trying to solve the case, figure out who it is. They're questioning Norman, and he's being really weird. Again, you get to the end. The big twist happens. It's such a good twist. I absolutely love this book. It's a 5-star book. It's super classic. It's really good. So, the classic one I would recommend is Psycho by Robert Bloch. Alright, the next book I'm going to recommend, I would say, is probably one of the more graphic ones in terms of a beginner horror book. This is the first one I read that was not really King related, that really got me into like the gory horror genre of stuff. And that's The Sleep Experiment by Jeremy Bates. This book was absolutely horrific in terms of how graphic it was. I gave this 5 stars. I did not expect this from an author I've never heard of before. Basically what this is about is there's this weird teacher at a college, and back in the early, in the 50s, like during the Cold War when it first kind of started, the Soviet military pretty much had done what's called a sleep experiment, where they put a gas into people where they don't fall asleep. And they wanted it, I don't remember what the intention was. I think it was a couple of prisoners, and I think they just did it to them to experiment and see like what non-sleeping would do. What ended up happening is they went completely mad. They killed themselves in horrific ways, and it was bad. We come to present day during a scientist or a professor at a college who wants to recreate the experiment. But he's claiming that it's like going to be better. It's under better supervision. It's, there's going to be better monitoring going on. And at any point, if the people want to give up, they can just give up. And what he does is he gets two kids that are like foreign exchange students, I think, and gives them like a crap ton of money. Like I think it's like by like $10,000 or like $50,000. I don't think it's quite $1 million, but he offers them a lot of money to do this experiment. And I think they got to do it for a week. And then he's got 2 assistants that are students in one of his classes that want to help him out. One's an Indian kid, and then there's another, I think, a Hispanic girl. And it does not go right whatsoever. It's very graphic. It's very gory. The way how they describe the things they do in the last couple hundred pages, it's very bad. It can definitely give you some horrific imagery. But it's a very good book. I really recommend this 5-star book, The Sleep Experiment by Jeremy Bates. Alright, the last book I'm going to recommend is my king pick for this, recommendations. There are plenty of horror books that can be recommended when it comes to Stephen King, and this is a decision that I made just off of my own recommendation. There could be tons of different starter guide, starter books for Stephen King that are horror related that could be a better pick than this, but this is one that I am recommending. I personally think it could be too much for a beginner. The Shining could be too much. Pet Sematary can be too much. Ultimately, this is the book I picked, and this is a book that nobody really talks about that often, and I feel like it needs to get more recognition because of how good of a story this actually is. And that is Christine by Stephen King, obviously. This book is really, really good. It's a hidden gem for me. It's a 5-star book. It's in my top, at this point, I'd probably say it's in my top 5 or 6 Stephen King books of all time. That's just how good this is. So this is about a kid in high school named Arnie Cunningham. He's kind of like this dorky kid, and he gets picked on a lot. He's friends with Dennis, who's this big high school kid in terms of, he's a football player. He's, pretty solid at football. And ideally what happens is at the beginning of the book, Dennis and them are kind of driving to school, and they happen to find this car, a 1958 Plymouth Fury, which is a red one, which back then I guess they didn't make red ones. They made them all cream color, but, this red one was, a rare one. And so this car, is absolutely stunning looking and beautiful. If I had the expense for it, I would definitely want to own one. Ultimately what he does is Arnie buys the car against the will of his friend Dennis, his parents, and he fixes it up, makes it look beautiful, and then this girl shows up. I think her name is Lee. Yeah, Lee Cabot is her name. And she transfers to the school. Arnie suddenly becomes this weird, popular, and I would say, popular, but he becomes, this more, stuck-up version of himself, thinks he's, top shit, he's, really cool, and it's all because of the car. And eventually he starts dating Lee, and he kind of becomes way more attached with the car than her. She notices it, she warns Dennis. Dennis is already aware of the situation. A lot of things happen in this book. I just absolutely love this. I really wish I had the time to really reread more King books, and obviously that's the plan for in the near future, is to reread some King books, and Christine is definitely atop of that list. So the last recommendation I've got for starting horror is Christine by Stephen King. Alright guys, so those are my horror book recommendations for starters in the genre of horror books. What are some horror recommendations you guys have? Make sure you let me know in the comment section down below. Again, thank you for staying tuned with Zocktober. It's going to be a long process, and it is going to be very exciting, and I'm happy that it's going on. Make sure you guys support the channel. Like, comment, subscribe. It's really fun doing this. It's a lot of work, and so it really would be appreciated to, drop a like, comment some of your favorite Halloween-related stuff, horror book stuff, and obviously subscribe. That's really helpful. So, again, we will see you guys in tomorrow's episode of Zocktober. Later.